Aion 2 might already be in a little bit of trouble, but my anticipation and hype for it is not yet dead. I'm still tentatively somewhat excited. So let's jump in and let's talk about what has happened and why we can now finally reveal some of the information, even though it's not fully clear. Let me explain. So the weekend that has just gone, there has been effectively a focus group test that was on a specific site in Korea. So only South Koreans got to actually go and experience it. Now, there was an NDA in effect there, but some people, for whatever reason, have been allowed to speak, some content creators, some YouTubers and stuff like that. And it's their feedback we're going to concentrate on. But it is worth noting that it's several different feedbacks from different people that we're trying to piece together. Some of it might be a little bit contradictory. Now, there's some main areas that we're going to need to talk about: the graphics, the UI, the combat, pay to win, and content, I guess, but probably more than that. We're going to start with one that's very dear to my own heart, and that is combat. Now, the combat seems to be a complete mixed bag here. There were lots of people talking about how the combat is non-targeting. It's very much like BDO or Terror or things like that. And I was getting very, very excited. What I now believe, looking at different feedback, is that there's actually two different modes. One of them will be a classic mode, which is going to be effectively tab targeting, and the other will be an action camera mode, where if you move your mouse, your character will look in that direction and it will just pick the character that you're looking at. Now, if that sounds very familiar, it does sound like Throne and Liberty, and that's going to be something that we keep mentioning during this. Now, if the action combat is sounding all great and amazing, it's non-target, people having a great time, that sounds great, that sounds exciting, but it gets a little bit made redundant if you can then just turn on classic tab targeting mode, and that is more optimal. Even if it's optimal in PvE or PvP, if it's more optimal, people will generally just pick that. Yes, it's nice to have an option, but for me, I'm going to pick the best option, right? I'm going to pick the most effective. To some extent, I will happily optimize the fun out of the game. And I know other people are going to do that as well. You do not want to gimp yourself in PvE or PvP, let's be honest. A lot of the feedback was saying that action camera is good for PvE, but the classic mode is what you want to be using for PvP. Which to me, I'll just use the classic mode throughout, because as I said, I'll just do that to myself if it's optimal. But it does sound like the combat might actually be relatively decent. Tab target, it doesn't sound like it's going to be awful. I'm hoping it's going to be sort of somewhat similar to Ashes of Creation, although that's just me hoping, because I think Ashes of Creation's tab target was actually pretty decent. Sounds like there's going to be like 10 to 12 abilities instead of like 30 or 40. Sounds like there is a dodge. I'm not sure about an active basic attack, but either way, the combat is sounding decent. It might not be amazing, but I just personally need it to be better than Throne and Liberty. Throne and Liberty I didn't play because I really didn't like this like static slowing down combat nature of that movement, which I know they've addressed now, but I didn't like it when it came out, so I didn't play it then. And I'm really hoping that Aion 2 will be a bit better than that, because that's one of the deal breakers for me. If I don't like the combat, it's very hard for me to like the game. And I know the audiences will be split. Some people love action combat, some people think it's jank, some people are just bored of tab target. I'm sort of somewhere in the middle. I can play both as long as the game is decent. There are some big topics that we need to talk about, but I just want to quickly talk about the graphics. Apparently the graphics are like top tier. May not be like S plus tier, but they sound pretty damn good. A lot of people are rating them around about 4 out of 5, which if we're honest kind of aligns with the trailer that we've seen. It's built on Unreal Engine 5 and it's probably a step up on Throne and Liberty. And let's be honest and let's be fair to Throne and Liberty. Throne and Liberty is a very pretty game, so if Aion 2 is that but better, yeah, fair enough. Now, a lot of you are going to be asking about pay to win. That sounds like it's not fully finalized yet. Some people were saying it's very similar to the business model of Throne and Liberty, and that's what I expected before going in, so maybe I'm just focusing on that feedback because that is what I was expecting. Of course, you can buy costumes and stuff like that. I'm going to assume that you can buy gear as well. However, I don't think it'll be like infinite amounts of gear that just makes you super duper stronger than everybody, but I am definitely expecting pay to win. You should be expecting pay to win. There will be pay to win in this game, I think. In the financials before, NCSoft have said this is going to be very similar to Throne and Liberty, so expect that. NCSoft, by the way, it seems like the stock price has gone up a little bit after this feedback, so seems mostly positive by the Koreans. Let's talk about the UI though. The UI has had probably the most negative amounts of comments I've seen, and that's because, and I'm going to paraphrase, but a lot of them were saying it sort of feels like Throne and Liberty and other mobile games, which is funny because obviously Throne and Liberty is not a mobile game, but it seems to definitely have mobile elements, at least in the UI. I'm not saying it plays like a mobile game. It obviously seems like it doesn't if the combat's pretty decent, but the UI apparently is sounding very mobile-esque. And that makes sense because some part of this game is going to be playable on mobile. I'm not sure at this point if it's going to be the mini game or the whole game. I keep trying to find like sources and nobody's really like 100% saying exactly what it is. I assume that it's a PC first game, but is also going to be purely fully playable on mobile. However, I can't find an exact source on that, so don't believe that if you don't want to. A lot of the feedback was talking about how there is mobile compatibility though, so I suspect it's going to be beyond just the mini games. And for me, mobile's not necessarily a deal breaker if the PC version was good. The problem with a game like Tarisland that I did actually sort of somewhat enjoy is that it definitely felt like the PC version was second. That was a mobile game that you could play on PC rather than the other way around. Aion 2 though sounds like it's PC first with mobile second, and I'm curious how that will work, especially considering the graphics are pretty good. And I think those three are going to be the main ones that people are going to like focus on. The combat is going to be important depending on how good it is or how bad it is. Pay to win, let's just assume it is going to be pay to win. And the UI feeling very mobile, if that starts affecting gameplay, yeah, that could be very, very bad. Those three, I think a lot of you are going to listen to that and just be like, oh, I'm done with this game. It doesn't sound very good. It's going to sound like another Korean slop MMO. And especially considering you just seen Chrono Odyssey, you definitely might be thinking that. I, on the other hand, think that there's still a little bit of hope here that there's a bit of a fun game, especially when you look at the content, right? So PvE versus PvP. The game primarily did like get announced as effectively going to be a PvE game, but there is PvP in here and there is realm versus realm PvP, which is pretty exciting. Apparently there's going to be like, I think they said somewhere like upwards of over 100 dungeons. There will be raids, although I think for the dungeons they said there would be 4 people. For the raids, I'm not sure how big they are. The feedback suggested that the content was good, that there was big boss fights to do. I'd say overall they were relatively positive about the content. I'm not going to go into specifics. Apparently you can fly everywhere from the start, or at least glide everywhere from the start. Getting mounts apparently comes from just killing the monsters and getting an RNG drop. There's been various different information about the classes, because obviously it's going to have a class system. Overall, I mean, the content sounds like typical MMO stuff, right? It doesn't sound anything crazy. It sounds like there's a little bit of gathering crafting, but it might not be the main focus. Party-based dungeons are going to be a thing. Solo dungeons sort of sound like they existed. The content sounds good. I think ultimately you can expect something a little bit different than, say, what Chrono Odyssey did. Chrono Odyssey, I believe, has the right idea but the wrong execution. I think the combat in Chrono Odyssey is pretty interesting. I think the gameplay is potentially very exciting. However, it did have many different issues, right? Performance, graphics, and movement. I don't think Aion 2 is going to suffer from some of those. I think the performance is going to be mostly okay. The graphics are going to be very nice. The movement might be an issue depending on the combat, but people seem to be enjoying the combat. And I do think Aion 2 will have accusations of simply being like a Korean mobile pay-to-win nightmare fuel game. But I'm willing now, having seen what I've seen, to at least keep it on the radar. I'm not going to wipe it off the radar, even though it's not like an action combat game. But if the content is good, I could definitely see myself playing it. If they are making effectively Throne of Liberty but better, which there's a lot of reasons to suggest that they might. Yes, they might rework the UI. I mean, games have changed the UI over time, but who cares about that? But I think if they really just make a fun tab target MMO, like there's nothing else right now, right? Next year, we're probably going to have Chrono, Aion 2, Arcade Chronicles at some point after that. What else is on the agenda? Right? What else is on the radar? Not much. I can definitely see myself spending some time with this, especially if the combat is a little bit better than Throne of Liberty. If they've learned the lessons from that game and it's not super static and you can move and it feels good, then I'm a lot more interested. However, if you're completely done with Korean MMOs and you don't want to check them out, that's fine. Wait until the proof is in the pudding. Wait until we see it. Wait till we get a beta. We'll probably get like a trailer or information from this test like officially. Then I suspect we'll get a Korean open test or a Korean closed test or something like that. And currently it's scheduled to release around about November. That's the expected time. Obviously, if they get a lot of feedback and they need to change it, that could get delayed or anything could happen, I guess. Koreans though are sort of known to pump, so we'll see if they actually get it out in that time. Definitely one I'm following. Not one I'm super hyped for yet, but when we play it, maybe that will change. I definitely think that the feedback from this test is a lot more positive than the feedback from the Throne of Liberty test. They did say like no offline play, no autoplay, none of that stuff. However, it does sound like there might be auto-pathing, so there's a little bit of like question mark on that one. When I say auto-pathing, I mean like going from one objective to another. Some people won't like that, some people don't care about that. I'm kind of in the I don't care about that camp. But yeah, I'm tentatively interested. It really, I think, will boil down to how it actually plays. If I don't mind the combat and I sort of like the combat, I'll give it a try. I'll probably not be a big spender. I don't really like pay-to-win games. I prefer non-pay-to-win games. But if there's nothing else to play, then I'll definitely give it a bash. Right, what else are we going to do? Let me know your thoughts though. Have a most beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.